Canon M50 owners, today is the day where we move from automatic to manual settings to record your videos. For starters, be sure to set your dial to the video setting. So if you've been using your M50 on auto, chances are you are still using the default settings. So if you notice here, you have 4 options: shooting settings, playback settings, function settings, and display level settings. Choose display level settings. And what we're going to do here is change the first one, menu display, from guided to standard. And you will see now that your menu is black. And the next thing is up to you. These mode and feature guides, I disable them because I find them annoying, but they are helpful when you are just starting out and you want explanations of the options that you are choosing. Now, the one thing I wanted to point out is the reason why we do this. If you now look to the right corner, you see the star, and this is the option My Menu. This is very beneficial later on when you have specific settings that you want to use for different scenarios, and basically you can save it here and have it kind of like your favorites and just access them a lot easier. So what I'd like you to do is head over to the camera settings here. So the first setting we want to look at is under the camera settings with the camera icon, and you will see 5 numbers which represents different categories in this setting. The very first one we want to check here is the shooting mode, and of course we want to choose the manual movie settings. Next, we want to change the movie recording quality. This is personal taste, and this has a lot to do with the lens you're using, your lighting situation, but typically most YouTubers would use 29.97 or 30 frames per second rounded off. And you also have the option of using 24 frames per second. In this example, it's 23.98, but it's 24 rounded off. Now, because we're using the kit lens, I'm going to recommend you to use 24 frames per second. And generally, the difference between the two is more the look. Traditionally, 24 frames per second were used for capturing motion films to give you that kind of cinematic look. 30 frames per second, really think broadcast TV, it has that type of look. So the other thing I would change here is the sound recording. Now, I have mine on manual if I use a lavalier mic, or if I'm using an external audio source that's plugged into the camera. This is where you can control basically the recording level as well. If you see, I have mine just above that first notch there, almost in the middle, so that it doesn't peak too high. Now, what you see there below beside the L and the R is the audio from the default mic on the camera. You want to make sure that you're not peaking. If I were to bring this all the way up, you see how that it's going into the yellow and it's almost peaking to the red. That's too high. So I like to keep it in between the middle or that first notch here to get kind of a good balance of volume, and I can always adjust that in post. So now let's skip over to category 3 here. We'll leave white balance for now because we're going to talk about that as we go. The only thing I would change here is the picture style. I tend to use neutral because it's more a realistic color profile. You can use automatic or portrait, standard, any of these. This is more to do with personal taste, and it has a lot to do with your lighting as well. I tend to use neutral because, again, it's more of an accurate color, and then in post-production I can tweak the colors a bit more. Under category 4, this is where we're going to set our focus methods here. Under AF method, make sure you click on tracking. There are other options here like zone and 1.AF. We won't get into that today, but what you want to choose is tracking. And this is beneficial for, whether you're moving a little bit or not, and keep your subject in focus. The next setting underneath is movie servo AF. You want to make sure that's enabled as well. And then the focus mode, you want to make sure it says AF, which means autofocus. MF is manual focus, but we want the focus to be done automatically. And then the last thing we want to do here in category 5 is set our button function here, and make sure that when you go under fully press, that it is start/stop movie recording. Now what this does, it allows you to use the shutter button, the button that you use to take pictures, to start recording. Now the reason why we changed this is the actual record button on the M50 is quite small and kind of a little bit of a nuisance to use. So using the actual shutter button here is very beneficial, and you want to make sure your half press option here is metering plus server AF. So now that your M50 settings are set, in the next video we're going to talk about finding the correct exposure for your setup.